In the remote stretch of southern New Mexico, where the wind carries dust and memory in equal measure, there stood a farm most folks forgot. Quiet, unremarkable. Nothing but sun-faded barns and fences worn thin by time. But underneath that faded wood and stillness was a man no one truly knew. Wade Mercer. To the locals, he was the man who sold eggs at the county fair and drank his coffee alone at sunrise. But there were whispers, the way he moved, the way he looked at things like he was always assessing. That morning when Atlas, his loyal German shepherd, growled low at the wind, Wade looked toward the hills, and in the distance, almost blending into the desert, were 3 dark SUVs creeping just slow enough to be watching. Something was coming, and they had no idea whose land they were stepping onto. Wade Mercer wasn't just a farmer, he was a myth in uniform. 30 years in the shadows, running missions that never made the papers, not even the ones that leaked. Call sign Whisper, not because he talked soft, but because you never heard him coming. He led Delta teams through jungles, deserts, cities under siege. He was the kind of man special forces whispered about in training, the ghost who got it done when plans fell apart. But 20 years ago, after one mission too many, he'd walked away, bought a stretch of land nobody wanted, and buried his past under acres of soil and silence. Still, the way he stacked his firewood in patterns, the way his barn had more padlocks than tools, it was clear to anyone paying attention. Wade Mercer hadn't forgotten a damn thing. He'd just been waiting for the right reason to remember. The first warning didn't come from Wade's security cameras. It came from the trembling voice of his neighbor, Ellie Rogers. She'd driven up in a dusty truck, hands shaking on the steering wheel. Said her cousin in the next county had packed up and left overnight. No goodbyes, just gone. She saw strangers at his place. Black trucks, tinted windows. Wade didn't say much, just nodded and offered her coffee. After she left, he walked his property. Atlas stayed close, ears high. Near the north fence, Wade knelt in the dust. Tire tracks, fresh, deep, heavy loads. Not locals, not ranchers. And near the ridge, he saw cigarette butts, filtered, imported. That night, Wade sat on his porch in silence, hand resting gently on Atlas's back. He didn't need confirmation. He'd seen this pattern before. A soft approach, testing, probing. The cartel was coming, and they had no idea what they'd walked into. The next morning brought trouble dressed in confidence. A man in a gray suit stood by Wade's gate, flanked by 2 others wearing too much cologne and too little patience. Wade didn't speak first. He just watched. The suited man smiled, extended a hand. Said his name was Luis, and he was representing an agricultural investment firm. Offered Wade 3 times the market value for his land. Cash. Wade leaned against the fence post, slow and relaxed. Said he wasn't interested. Luis's smile faded just a hair. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. Said progress was coming through the valley, whether folks liked it or not. Accidents happened. Wade let the silence stretch before speaking. Said, "This land's seen worse than you." Luis glanced at Atlas, who growled low. "You've got 24 hours to reconsider," he muttered. Wade tipped his hat and turned. Behind him, Atlas watched until the men disappeared. Wade waited until nightfall before moving. Beneath his barn, hidden under hay and tools, he pulled up a reinforced floor panel. Dust rose, but nothing was disturbed. Not a single cobweb. Inside the cellar, time stood still. Maps, radios, weapons cleaned and sealed in airtight cases. A generator kicked on, illuminating years of preparation. Wade sat at the steel desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out an old worn phone. A single number, no name. He dialed. "It's Whisper," he said when the line clicked. "Need the old crew." On the other end, a breath of silence. Then, "Thought you were done," Wade replied. "So did I." He sent coordinates, timelines, instructions, concise and surgical. He knew the kind of men he'd trained with. If they were coming, they were already moving. Wade stood slowly, scanning his gear one last time. The past wasn't knocking anymore. It had kicked down the door. By the time the sun rose again, they had started to arrive. One by one. Quiet. Unmarked trucks, beaten down by time, but hiding strength beneath the hood. First was Boone, the sniper, tall and quiet with eyes that never stopped moving. Then Diaz, explosives expert, always grinning like he was planning mischief. Morgan, the medic with hands steady enough to sew in the dark. Chet, the close-quarters fighter who once cleared an entire compound with a knife and a 6-second window. And finally Lynn, cyber ops, the one who spoke least but saw the most. They didn't need a briefing, didn't need pleasantries, just a nod from Wade and a map on the table. Wade outlined the terrain, the threat, the plan. They all listened, no interruptions. This wasn't nostalgia. This was business. War. And every man in that barn knew. When Whisper called, you brought everything you had. The cartel's arrogance showed before their boots hit the soil. They moved in broad daylight, 5 SUVs crawling through the valley, posted lookouts in plain sight, and even staked flags on the Henderson property like it already belonged to them. But Wade's team saw everything. Boone tracked their patrol routes through high-powered optics. Lynn intercepted their encrypted comms and started feeding them misinformation. Diaz marked the weak points in their convoy's movement. They weren't just watching. They were already shaping the battlefield. Morgan cataloged medical risks, planned triage in case the valley turned red. Chet patrolled the tree line like a panther. And Wade, he simply walked his land, measuring every inch of the fight he was about to bring. No panic, no fear, just readiness. At sunset, the wind shifted, the kind of shift Wade recognized. Tomorrow, he told the team, they'll make their move, and they'd be waiting. At dawn, the valley breathed smoke. The cartel had come expecting a frightened farmer in a dusty old house. What they got was a fortress dressed as a barn, and a team that moved like shadows. Diaz lit the road first, pressure mines flipping the lead SUVs into fireballs. Chaos. Boone's shots followed, clean and clinical. Knees, shoulders, no wasted rounds. The second wave tried to flank through the eastern ridge, but Chet and Wade were already waiting. Close quarters chaos, hand-to-hand mastery. Cartel soldiers trained for street warfare found themselves undone by men who'd fought wars nobody could name. From the hills, Lynn disrupted their radios, feeding them false orders, turning them into ghosts on their own frequency. Wade moved like a storm, guiding, striking, disappearing. And Atlas, that dog was a fury unleashed, cornering runners and protecting his ground. When the smoke cleared, the only thing standing was the farmhouse. As the last crack of gunfire echoed, Wade stood face to face with the cartel leader. Bloodied, furious, but alive. The man screamed in Spanish, demanded to know who they were, who Wade really was. Wade didn't blink. I'm the man who trained the ghosts you couldn't see. The last voice they heard before silence. The cartel boss reached for a weapon. Wade stepped forward, one swift movement, and the pistol clattered to the dirt. This was never your land, Wade said, and it sure as hell won't be your grave. The man fell to his knees, defeated. Wade didn't finish him. He didn't need to. Sometimes letting them crawl away, broken, bleeding, and afraid, sent a stronger message. That night, tied and zip-tied cartel soldiers were left in rows. The only sound was the hum of radios and the distant cry of coyotes who knew better than to cross Wade Mercer. By the time the authorities arrived, Wade had already disappeared from sight. His team scattered, their presence scrubbed clean like they'd never existed. 40 cartel members, alive but injured with surgical precision, sat in the dirt surrounded by the wreckage of arrogance. Sheriff Daniels arrived first, his jaw slack, said he'd never seen a shootout so clean. The FBI showed up hours later, agents with tactical gear and raised eyebrows. No one questioned Wade. Not really. They asked who did it, and he just nodded at Atlas. Guess they weren't used to big dogs. The locals, though, they knew. They didn't say a word, but the way they looked at Wade changed. Reverent, grateful, and cautious. He wasn't just a farmer anymore. He was a reminder that some men retire, but they never stop being who they are. The cartel had made a mistake, and they'd never forget it. Now when the wind sweeps over that New Mexico farm, folks still talk in hushed tones. About the night the valley lit up. About the black SUVs that drove in and never drove out. About the dog that never barked unless it mattered. Wade Mercer still works his land, still mends fences. But now the mailbox at the end of his road has a new sign carved in wood. Private. No trespassing. No second chances. Folks in town steer clear, but not out of fear, out of respect. Because they know, behind that porch swing and those quiet morning coffees is a man who once led warriors in the shadows. And when the dark comes back, and it always does, they know one thing for sure. There's a ghost in that valley, and he doesn't need a uniform to defend his home.